I don't want to set the world on fire.
Hi everyone, this is Violet Irwin. Thanks for tuning in to another one of my Car Confessionals. Today I'm going to focus on the 10 Commandments and why, whether you believe in God or not, if you don't follow the 10 Commandments, it's going to come back to bite you. And I know that seems a little bit strange of a topic, but really, I've been thinking about it, and a lot of people who find themselves in really horrible places in life are in those places because they really haven't been abiding by what is prescribed through the 10 Commandments. And it's not because these people don't believe in God and that's why. It's because the advice of the 10 Commandments is actually practical whether you're a believer or not. And that's my thesis today. So I'm going to go through every commandment of the 10 in order and try to explain why breaking that commandment, even if you don't believe in God, will still have a negative impact on your life. So that's what I want to do today. As many of you will recall, the first of the 10 Commandments is essentially that you shall have no other gods except for the one God. And, you know, I'm going to use kind of paraphrasing here because obviously I don't have the Bible right in front of me to read the specific language of each commandment. But the first commandment in theory and the basics is there's only one God and you can't have other gods before me. Now, this one in particular might seem like, how can this apply to me if I don't believe in God, right? But the thing is, even if you don't believe in God, what this rule says is, if you try to put something else other than your morality on a pedestal, that's going to cause problems, right? For example, if you choose to elevate wealth to be your God, or sex to be your God, or fame to be your God, you'll do all kinds of things in order to achieve that which you have made your God. So in effect, what the first commandment is saying is, if you put anything other than God, or what I would define God as the ultimate ideal, if you put anything other than the ultimate idea or the ultimate personification of perfection as your number one priority, that ultimately will have consequences for your life. So, no other gods besides me really means that don't compromise your morality and don't compromise your vision of the ideal for the sake of something else that you want to put above it, because everything of this world is somewhat trivial in the grand scheme of things. So you can't elevate that of this world to be above that which transcends this world, which is the ideal and morality, right? So that's kind of what's going on with the first one. Now the second commandment is that you shall not take the Lord's name in vain. And I remember as a kid, this commandment was kind of used as an excuse to say, don't swear, or don't say God damn it, or don't say whatever. But I really think that that's a bastardization of what the second commandment actually is. Because what the second commandment really means is that you shall not invoke God's name to do ill, right? Don't use my name in vain. Don't use my name to do evil, right? And this is one of the things that I think the kind of Christian right doesn't even realize, you know? Because so often they'll do things in God's name, ultimately result in the federal government using more force on its citizens, right? So many Christians are in favor of stricter rules on culture and on sexuality and all that, but the thing is, they're using God's name in vain in those pursuits. Because what they're saying is, I'm going to do what I think God wants, and I'm going to use God's name to justify my actions, right? And that's using God's name in vain. It's not, in theory, actually saying God damn it is actually kind of a prayer, because what you're really asking for is for God to damn something, right? For God to bring ill on something. It's a prayer. That's what God damn it is. And same thing with exclaiming Jesus Christ or oh my God. Those aren't taking God's name in vain. Those are really just kind of vulgar expressions of prayer. I would say that currently the most egregious example of taking the Lord's name in vain are the neocons in the Republican Party. And the reason I say that is because most of these fools are Christians, and they're trying to justify going in and, you know, let me put it this way. There's a theory in Christianity called just war, which means that if you're attacked and, you know, if you're being invaded, you have the right to defend your territory and to defend your country, and you can fight a just war if you've been attacked. But what these neocons are doing is saying that America is so great and so exceptional because we've got kind of God on our side. They really do kind of say that. We've got God on our side because we are good and we can bring good to the world. And we're going to bring good to the world with bombs, I guess? And so a lot of you might come with me on this journey and say, you're right, you know, the neocons, they're using God's name in vain. But how is this actually negatively impacting their life? And I actually think it's pretty obvious that the ideology of the neoconservatives is not really taking root or growing. It's collapsing. And you see that with the rise of Donald Trump and the Republican Party. This standard neoconservative Republican plan of spreading American exceptionalism through violence and force, you know, the American people really don't resonate with that. And it makes sense because it's taking the Lord's name in vain. Everyone can tell that that's not for the greater good, that we're going around in nation building. It's just not. So, have they been able to profit from it from a certain amount of time? Sure. But ultimately, that ideology is going to lose out. So if you want to have your ideology win out in the end, the answer is not to use God's name to justify evil. It just will never work. So that's what the second commandment's actually about. The third commandment, and we all know this one too, is keep holy the Sabbath day. And this one I really love, because a lot of people want to treat this commandment as if it's saying, you have to go to church every Sunday or you're fucked, right? But that's really not what keep holy the Sabbath day is. To me, keep holy the Sabbath day is about rest, right? And you can see that this is really the meaning of the Sabbath day when you look at some of these notoriously Christian companies, right? Like Hobby Lobby and Chick-fil-A. They're not open on Sundays at all. And that's because the Sabbath day is a day to rest, right? Even God had to rest on the seventh day. That's kind of, you know, that idiom has been a thing because there is value in Christianity in taking time to decompress. And the negative impact of not taking a day to rest is really, really clear. I mean, burnout is a huge problem among professionals in America. People burn themselves out working to death trying to make a buck, right? But what people don't understand is ultimately you'll have more energy and be more ready to tackle your challenges in the world if you're well rested. And Jordan Peterson talks about how if you as a business professional or something like that actually take a little bit of time to yourself, it actually makes the time that you're not using for leisure more productive because you have more energy for it. So it just goes to show that even if you don't use the Sabbath day for going to church like I do, and I get a lot of value out of going to church, it energizes me for the rest of the week. But even if you don't use it for religious purposes, if you don't honor the fact that you need to rest every once in a while, that's really going to come back to bite you. It'll bite your health, it'll bite your psychological well-being and your emotional well-being, and likely your family relations and relationships. I mean, if you don't keep holy the Sabbath day and take that seventh day to rest, I mean, life can really come at you fast and screw you over. So, I'm a firm believer in keeping holy the Sabbath day. The fourth commandment is to honor your parents. And this one, of course, as a kid, when you learn it, it's like, oh, this is just something that my parents are telling me to make sure that I don't break whatever arbitrary rules they set for me, right? right? But that's not really what this commandment's about either. Especially having really listened to Jordan Peterson and Camille Paglia and a lot of these sort of cultural philosophers who discuss history in a cultural context. You have to understand that honoring your mother and father isn't just listening to what your parents say. It's honoring the traditions that have brought you to the state of being that you're currently in. So the only reason why I'm in this great country of America, where I have the freedom to record this and put it online, even though I'm kind of vulgar and kind of crazy sometimes, and a lot of people will probably disagree with me or be triggered by me, I still live in this great culture of freedom. And the only reason I get to live in such a great culture of freedom is because my predecessors and ancestors fought and died for this country, fought and died for the Constitution, and fought and died to ensure that we were never invaded or anything like that. So you've got to honor your ancestry. That's really what the fourth commandment's about. And the reason why I mentioned Jordan Peterson is he always talks about going, Pinocchio style, going into the belly of the whale and rescuing your dead father from the depths. And that's how you save culture. And it's true. And each generation has to do that. Each generation has to honor thy father and mother and go back into their history and pull what's important from it and bring it into the current day. But it's not just going into the belly of the whale and rescuing your dead father. You also have to rescue the dead aspects of the mother archetype too. Because while the overbearing mother archetype is currently run rampant in our society, overall, there's a lot of good parts of the mother archetype. I mean, the mother nurtures the next generation and brings it forward and helps the next generation face the challenges and tribulations that go along with being a human being. And so not only do you have to rescue your father from the belly of the whale, that's rescuing culture, but you also have to rescue that part of our nature that makes us human. And that's why you have to honor thy mother as well. So honor thy father and mother, and really a comment on honoring your ancestors and the cultural and historical actions that have gotten you to where you are today. Because if you just throw that all away, you're not going to like what's left. Our ancestors got here because they weren't stupid, frankly. I mean, people want to think that our ancestors were so primitive, but they weren't. Our morality and our culture has developed over thousands and thousands of years, and people want to say, oh, Western culture is kind of new. It's like, well, it's kind of new. But even if you go back to the Egyptians, the foundations of our culture are there. It's just been refined and refined over all this time. So you have to honor your father and mother and honor what your ancestors bring to the table in terms of your current state of being. So that's the fourth commandment. The fifth commandment is, this one's pretty simple, thou shalt not kill. And I think the repercussions of violating this commandment here on earth are pretty obvious, even if you don't believe in God. I mean, if you commit a murder, there's criminal and civil penalties associated with that. But more importantly, and this is kind of what happens in Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, is that even if you get away with the murder legally, you never get away with it psychologically or emotionally. And it's kind of like that, the telltale heart too, right? It's like the psychological trauma of killing another human can eat you up inside, And that's no joke. That's no joke. It's not like, oh, I kind of feel bad. It's, you will go through agonizing psychological trauma from something like that. No one gets away with killing someone. Even if they don't go to prison, you never get away with killing someone. So I won't spend too much time on that. I think it's pretty obvious why killing people has a negative impact in your life. But I also think that this commandment's important because it does show that our culture values human life, right? And it acknowledges that taking a human life, even if you don't face the criminal and civil penalties, takes a toll on a human being. So don't do it, Because even if killing weren't enshrined in law, I still think that in general you'd be shunned by the community at large if you're a murderer. You know, there are real consequences for committing a murder, and it's not just because God says so. It's just reality. You can't get away with killing people. That's the deal. It's the same thing with thou shalt not steal, which is the sixth commandment. And I think what's so interesting about the thou shalt not steal, because obviously stealing has the same potential legal and civil consequence type deal as killing someone. It also has the potential for public shunning and psychological and emotional trauma. But I think the real key and the real lesson that we need to learn in our current civilization regarding thou shalt not steal is the lesson that still has not been learned about communism, which is that you can never create prosperity out of theft. You just can't. So, you know, all the other consequences aside that will bite you in the ass from stealing, if you allow your cultural and legal system to make stealing okay, wherein, you know, in communism it's like no one owns property, which as you know is blasphemy to my personal ideology, and as I'm trying to memorialize my property manifesto into video and into writing. But the consequences of a culture abandoning the notion that stealing is bad ultimately leads to the kind of totalitarian, horrible socialist communist regimes that have marked the horrors of the 20th century, right? I mean, people like Stalin and Mao and Chavez and, you know, all these people would never have been able to commit the horrific crimes against their populations and kill, you know, 100 million people in the 20th century if the cultures and individuals underneath those regimes hadn't let go the notion of thou shalt not steal. Letting go the notion of thou shalt not steal effectively resulted in the deaths of 100 million people under communism. So, and again, that's not a Catholic priest saying, oh, you know, don't steal because, you know, 100 million people will die. It's just reality. People abandoned the notion of thou shalt not steal because they abandoned the notion of property rights, which is the foundation of thou shalt not steal, and it resulted in the most horrific communist and socialist regimes that ultimately were the most murderous regimes in human history. So thou shalt not steal is not just like, oh, don't take my, like, pen, because God's gonna smite you. Thou shalt not steal, because if you start endorsing that, you know, that can have societal consequences that are just so horrific that it boggles the mind. So, and I got a little wound up on thou shalt not steal, so I'll take it back a notch, hopefully, for the rest of the commandments. But thou shalt not steal is a biggie, a real biggie. And I'll go into it in more detail when I post my next property manifesto video on personal property and why theft is such a violation of that property right. In terms of thou shalt not commit adultery, this really, I mean, you can get into the technicals in Catholicism about what adultery really means. Definitionally speaking, it really is kind of, or at least in the catechism, it's kind of specifically talking about if you have sexual relations with someone who's not your spouse. That's really what the adultery commandment has been understood to mean from the church standpoint for a long time. But in terms of whether or not you believe in God and how this affects you, I think it's pretty clear that if you cheat on your spouse or your wife or whatever, there's a lot of consequences to that in your real life. There's a lot of consequences to that in your real life. So, and it makes sense. I mean, for example, if you, and I have some people in my life who have experienced this firsthand, but if you're married and you have kids and you decide to get divorced, and then you go marry someone else and you have kids with that person, while you may be kind of happier, quote unquote, with this new individual that you're dating, it doesn't necessarily mean that you haven't escaped hell, as it were. And when I say hell, I'm not even talking about afterlife hell. I'm talking about in your present life hell, okay? And I've seen plenty of men who were married and had kids and then got divorced and got married and had other kids who are now just ripping their hair out trying to figure out how to make their lives work because they're now effectively responsible for 2 families. The first family has a valid grievance here, right? Because they feel abandoned by the father kind of leaving, and I'm using the father in this instance merely because it was the example I started with, because the father left the wife and the kids and kind of chose a different family to supplant them. But on the other side of the coin, the new family, especially the new wife, will always be like, why was I the second choice? Why was I the second person? So it creates kind of an inferiority complex between the second wife and the first wife. So, as anyone who has dealt with their siblings and their parents can imagine, the dynamics of one family are challenging enough to deal with. But the dynamics of 2 families, when both sides are both of the families are kind of feeling some resentment or some weird jealousy or things, that's a recipe to end up in a hellish situation, because you just can't please 2 families at once. You can't have your heart in 2 places at once. But more importantly than this whole idea about having 2 families and creating 2 families after a marriage, if you expand, you know, thou shalt not commit adultery to just all cheating, even outside of a marriage, just in a, you know, kind of romantic relationship that is not bound by law or by a religion or something like that, I still think that not cheating is really important, because I'll admit that there was one boyfriend that I had a while ago that I did cheat on him, and he never found out about it. But I still bear that weight all the time. Like, I didn't get away with it. He didn't find out about it, but it doesn't mean that I got away with it, because I feel so much guilt. My guilt over that is still so horrible, and I reveal it to everyone I date after that, because it's like I can't hold that guilt of cheating on someone in my heart. It really can destroy you, because ultimately what you're doing is betraying someone, and betraying someone doesn't just hurt the person who's betrayed, it hurts you. It hurts your soul, it hurts your heart and your spirit. And so many people want to just think like, oh well, I'm not religious so I can do whatever I want and I'll never feel guilt. It's like, the guilt part isn't because of your religion. The guilt part is because you're doing something that is fundamentally hurting you as a person, right? And that's what adultery does. Adultery is an act of betrayal, and when you betray someone, it doesn't just impact the person you betray, it hurts you too. And so that's really why, even if you don't believe in God, you really shouldn't commit adultery or cheat. It'll bite you. We're getting kind of to the end of the commandments. We only have 3 left. The next of which is don't lie. You know, thou shalt not bear false witness. So this one I abide by as much as I possibly can in my life. And I have to say that since I've adopted this rule in my life has dramatically changed. It's true. Adopting the don't lie, not just always tell the truth, but just actively don't lie. I've lost a lot of friends, but the friends that I've gained are actually better friends than the ones that I've lost. And I also have had to make kind of career changes because of that, because once you realize that you don't want to lie anymore, that means that you can't just kowtow to whatever some boss tells you. That means that when you go into the workplace, if everyone's espousing political beliefs that you just think are absurd, it's really hard just to stand there and bite your tongue, right? And the consequences of not biting your tongue are getting fired. But ultimately, my happiness and my soul and my spirit are just so much more satisfied now that I actively try to tell the truth all the time and to not lie. And that's just my personal anecdote, but I honestly believe that your life will change in ways that you can't even dream of if you just take the time and the effort to not lie. just to not lie. Like, it's like JBP says, actively telling the truth is hard, and that gets a little bit grayer, especially when people's feelings can get hurt over kind of trivial things, like the whole, what do you think of this dress? It's like, well, you know, if a husband tells his wife that she looks pretty good in a dress, even if she doesn't, you know, that's probably not going to have that big of consequences on you. But I'll tell you what, the big lies of my life, I did not get away with at all. At all. And during the time that I was getting away with them, it was just eating me up inside that I was having to keep up this lie. Because lies beget more lies, just like truth begets more truth. So if you say one lie, you probably are going to have to say more lies to cover up the first lie and more lies to cover up that second lie. And then you get to a point where you have so many lies that you can't even keep them, that you can't even keep track of the lies. And once you get to that place, I mean, you are just a mental basket case. Your identity as a human's not even clear. Because what people don't understand is when you tell a lie, it's not like you're just lying to that other person. You're lying to yourself, too. And when you lie to yourself, that can make you pathological. In fact, it does make you pathological because you're actively telling yourself that which is out of touch with reality. And as Ayn Rand, you know, famously said, you can ignore reality, but eventually you can't ignore the consequences of ignoring reality. The last two commandments, if you recall, are thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, and thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's possessions. And while these are two different issues, I still think I can address how it impacts your everyday life as kind of one more global arching commandment that that relates to coveting that which your neighbors have, whether it's the spouse or whether it's goods, right? I think these two commandments, more than all the other commandments, really kind of give you an overarching framework of not only how an individual should approach the world, but also how society should approach the world, right? So, as Jordan Peterson has discussed so eloquently in his biblical lectures, and the lecture he gave on Cain and Abel, I don't know, I think that's some of the best, those are the best few hours of intellectual speak that I've heard, I don't know, in my academic career. I mean, the foundations that he lays out regarding Cain and Abel are so important and fundamental. Everyone's got to watch it and internalize that message. But that message is really what these last two commandments are about. Because to paraphrase Jordan B. Peterson, and I'm sorry, Jabes, for perhaps bastardizing your language, because I'm nowhere near as much of an intellectual as him, but the idea is that when Cain murders Abel, he's murdering Abel not because he's just a horrible psychopathic person, but because he has let his resentment and his jealousy of Abel drive him to the brink. So if you hold all that resentment and jealousy in your heart, that ultimately leads to a nihilism and a hatred of being that allows people to go down the paths of being murderous. So getting back to the commandments, talking about coveting, right? Coveting is really a matter of envy or of jealousy. Because it's like, oh, if only I could have that woman as my wife, I'd be happy. Oh, if only I could have their car, I'd be happy. If only I could be wealthy like them, I'd be happy. And none of that's true. None of that's true. All the external things that you don't have in your life are not what's preventing you from happiness. And frankly, happiness is never a permanent state of being. Even if you ever get to a place where you're feeling pretty groovy for a bit, ultimately, you know, happiness is something that comes and goes in waves. The real important thing is to make sure that you're on a positive trajectory in your life. But I digress. The real issue is that letting envy consume you will destroy your life. And again, it's not because I believe in God that that's true. It's because envy destroys individuals. It just does. It leads them to nihilism, and it leads them to it really does lead to a murderous ideology if you are that upset with the state of being. Because if you allow envy and resentment to control you, in effect, what you have done is say, being is not even worth it, right? There's too much suffering and problems, and other people are so much more fortunate than me that it's not even worth living, you know? And not only is it not worth living, I want to take this whole train with me, right? I'm going to bring the house down with me. And that's why you see people who end up like the Columbine shooters who, you know, shoot up a school and then shoot themselves, because they don't give a shit about their life. I mean, they're nihilists. They've been so ensconced in the envy and the coveting of what other people have that it's just like, fuck it, I'll just kill everyone and then kill myself. I'm gonna do as much damage to these other people as I can before I'm out, right? So that's a little summary of Jordan B. Peterson's idea about Cain and Abel. But it's true in terms of coveting as well, and it's on a small scale and a grand scale. On a small scale, you can end up murderous and hateful towards those around you because you're so resentful and envious of their spouse and goods that you just hate them and use that hate to fuel your actions that, you know, are probably pretty horrific and will have criminal or civil consequences or psychological consequences like we've talked about. But on a grander scale, and I'm going to break the commandments back up here for this part, as a society, breaking the 9th and 10th commandments leads to totalitarianism, okay? And I'm going to illustrate that first by discussing the 10th commandment first instead of the 9th, because the 10th is about possessions. So to me, the entire basis of communism is an coveting of another's possessions, right? Oh, all of these, you know, all these rich types control the means of production. Why should they get to have all that money, right? So if they have all that money, someone needs to take it from them, stealing, and take it from them and give it to me because I deserve it more, right? And that's really what coveting is. It's like, they don't deserve to have it, I do. So the entirety of the Marxist doctrine is kind of based on this idea that not only should you covet the goods of others and the property of others, but to covet it is actually the plight of humanity, and to manifest that coveting in a revolution is actually the inevitable and desirable goal of the human race. I mean, that's pretty much what communism's about, right? And again, as I talked about with previous commandments, communism has led to, you know, the deaths of 100 million people, and notoriously is, you know, a stain on human history, right? And it's all because the communists were so covetous of other people's goods, right? They even like poor farmers, you know, it's like, oh, they've got a farm? Well, that's more than me, fuck them. We have to take it from them because I covet that. And if you let that coveting overwhelm you, not only do you covet stuff from the wealthy, but you begin to covet stuff from the middle class and even from those who are just having scraps, because at the end of the day, having scraps is still more than having nothing, and that's still something that could be coveted, right? But the key is to have gratitude for that which you already have. And having gratitude, first of all, you'll be happier in your day-to-day life, but more importantly, it prevents you from going down that path of nihilism that Cain went down. And if everyone adopts that as a society that they're not going to covet, it prevents you from ending up in a totalitarian, horrible regime like was seen in Stalinist Russia and Maoist China. So that's kind of how that relates to the 10th commandment. But I want to talk about the 9th commandment more in terms of present times, because I think that the coveting of the spouse is much more relevant to this current postmodernist neo-Marxist ideology that's being permeated in culture. And the reason I say that is there's been kind of this new push, and luckily it's not getting that much traction, but there's been kind of this push to say that if you don't want to date a transgender person, then that means that you're a bigot in some fashion. Like me as a straight woman, like if I don't want to be with a trans man because he, she, they, or whatever bullshit doesn't have a penis, then that makes me a bigot. So the way this relates to the 9th commandment is that these trans individuals are essentially coveting that which straight individuals have, right? And I'll admit it, it's a lot easier probably to find a sexual or romantic partner when you're straight, because It's the most prevalent sexuality. It's a lot easier to find it. And you know, I gotta say, I'm a straight woman. I wanna have a penis down there. It's kind of part of the deal, right? But what these trans activists are really saying is, look, I want what you got. I want to have access to the same pool of people that you guys have. And so if I can't have access to that, you're a bigot, because I want it, I covet it. And furthermore, that we need the law and the government to come in and make you want me, even if you don't. Even if you're straight, even if you want a penis or don't want a penis or whatever. Whatever your personal preferences are as they pertain to genitalia or gender, are bigotry, because they covet that which straight and actually even gay individuals have, right? Because the thing is, if you're a gay man, you like men. And so that means that you might not be interested in a trans man because there's no penis there, right? I mean, pre-op, I'm talking pre-op. But the whole idea is that they covet that which the gay community and the straight community has, which is the ability to kind of pursue their sexual interests without the genitalia being a problem. And I understand their plight, but to let this covetousness take over your political ideology and for you to try to destroy the liberties in America in order to facilitate some kind of situation where any kind of person that you want to have sex with can't say no, I mean, that's really kind of the slippery slope on the cultural level of disobeying the 9th commandment, right? Because you can't covet sexually that which you can't have and pursue that on a cultural level without imposing tyranny. That's the only way. So I think that's important to note. I also think that the 9th commandment is relevant in our current times because in the age of Tinder and being able to swap out partners real easy, like you can just find another one real quick, so many people, even in a good relationship, are coveting that which they don't have. They want to trade up because they covet that which other people have, right? It's like, oh, I'm dating this girl, but man, I saw someone dating someone hotter. Maybe I could get that kind of hotness, you know? So screw this person or whoever I've been dating this whole time because I can trade up, right? It's all part of this trade up culture. And the trade up culture is ultimately leading to a lot of unhappiness among millennials because no one is building substantive, long-term relationships. It's not happening as much. And I think it's because people are always coveting, not necessarily the spouse, but the romantic partners that other people have. Everyone's trying to trade up. Everyone's trying to kind of Ponzi scheme style, just keep switching and getting the best option, right? And it's just not, ultimately for our happiness, it's not gonna work out because the relationships that work the best and provide the most happiness are stable, two individual relationships that are monogamous and that are long-term. And you can't get either of those when you're just constantly looking for your next score and coveting all the women who are out there dating other men or coveting women who are single. Like, you just can't, the grass is always greener syndrome with a romantic partner will lead to unhappiness all the time. So not only is it a problem in the transgender community, but even within the straight community. I mean, we really have a problem with coveting the romantic relationships that we don't have. And until we learn how to get over that, I think the crisis in marriage and divorce and in relationships is going to continue, as is the use of stuff like Tinder and, you know, these other mechanisms where people can just kind of quickly hook up and quit it, right? So, with that, I actually have gone through all 10 commandments, and I want to thank you so much for sticking it out to the end. I hope you'll tune in for the next one. Please like and subscribe below, and I'll see you all soon.
I just want to start a flame in your heart.